right, good evening. I think we're going to get started. My name is Julian Sierra. I'm the state senator for the Cape and Islands District, which stretches from Mashpee all the way up to Provincetown and Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard. And we're going to start this evening with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise and join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, thank all of you for joining us tonight. We have had a busy day already on Cape Cod, and we're great to be here tonight. Thank you to the Mashpee Public Schools for hosting us this evening. Want to recognize a few officials we have in the room. Commissioner Beatty from Barnstable County is here. Thank you for joining us. Andy Gottlieb, who is a selectman and actually chair of the Board of Selectmen, has joined us. I see Sheila Lyons, former county commissioner. And if I've neglected any officials, wave your hands and I will recognize you. I'm so thrilled to have Senate President Pro Tem Mark Pacheco here. Senator Pacheco is the chairman of the Senate Committee on Global Warming and Climate Change. He has shown tremendous leadership in these issues, in energy, clean energy and climate change for decades. And he has really kept up the drumbeat in the Senate and in the legislature to push Massachusetts not only to lead on these issues, for decades, but to keep that up. I'm also thrilled that my friend and colleague, Senator Mike Brady from Brockton, is here. He is the vice chair of the Joint Committee of Energy, Telecommunications, and Utilities and Telecommunications. So I'm still getting the names of all these committees right. And so he and his committee will have a big hand in looking at clean energy. So this is the first hearing of the Massachusetts Clean Energy Future Tour. So it's going to consist of 9 public hearings across the state, led by the Senate Committee on Global Warming and Climate Change. And this committee, under Chairman Pacheco's leadership, is really committed to hearing from you. You all know that on Cape Cod, on Martha's Vineyard, on Nantucket, our communities are witnessing the effects of climate change firsthand. From our very beginning, our communities, our way of life, were built on the sea, first in shipbuilding and whaling and fishing. Later, as our region has become the desirable summer destination where hundreds of thousands of people flock in a few short weeks to be here to enjoy our pristine beaches, our protected seashore. And really, our viability and prosperity has always been dependent on our environment, on our ocean. You all know, and you live this, that the environment here, the climate here is changing. We estimate that if sea level rise is on track to rise the 6 feet that some estimate that it will by the next century, by 2100, it actually would break the Cape in two. We'd have nearly 200 miles of roadway submerged and 22,000 acres of land. That would impact over 800 businesses with pretty significant effects. So we in the Senate have been really committed to taking climate action on climate change far longer than I've been around. Admittedly, I think we're worried that the new administration in Washington seems intent on rolling back gains that have been made under President Obama's leadership. We're hopeful that all of that won't come to pass, and we are committed to ensuring that Massachusetts continues on our progress in tackling climate change, building towards climate resiliency, on leading in energy efficiency. This is not only good for our environment, it's good for our economy. Because of the investment in clean energy, we've seen nearly 25,000 high-paying jobs in southeastern Mass alone, with 1,600 clean energy businesses. As I said before, as Cape and Islanders, we have more at stake than almost any of the other communities in the Commonwealth, literally as the foundation of where we live. And I just want to thank all of you for joining us tonight. And I want to introduce Senator Mark Pacheco. And I'm so grateful for your leadership and for joining us here in Mashpee on the Cape in the first of these 9 tours. So, Senator Pacheco.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me just begin by thanking your state senator, Julian Sear, for his leadership and the excitement that he brings to representing all of you on the Cape. He has been just a pleasure to work with in the Massachusetts legislature, and it's a pleasure for both Senator Brady and I to be here this evening to listen to you. That's what we're here for. A number of years ago, I went around the Commonwealth and listened to citizens about their concerns relative to climate change back then. Now, I'm talking about 2007, 2008, and at that point in time, there were a lot of people that thought I was a bit nuts, that I would be talking about this issue. And we listened to citizens, we listened to stakeholder organizations, environmental organizations, come forward and talk about what we needed to do here in Massachusetts if we wanted to try to do our part in trying to make sure that we would be part of trying to alleviate the worst effects of global climate change. And as a result of that process, we actually developed a piece of legislation called the Global Warming Solutions Act, which today in Massachusetts, it is law. We have not goals, but requirements in state statute that requires 25%, requires us as political leaders to lower greenhouse gas emissions 25% below the 1990 levels by 2020 and 80% below the 1990 levels by 2050, and we are on our way to meeting those requirements. There's a lot that has to happen to make sure that they are met, and there are a lot of strategies that people talk about that are suggested to us. There are probably 100 bills that have been filed this year that deal with lowering greenhouse gas emissions, strategies for energy efficiency, strategies for increasing our renewable portfolio standards, incentivizing solar, looking at ways in which we can expand offshore wind capacity out in the federal waters that have been designated for such use, looking at embracing new technologies so that we can lower greenhouse gas emissions and embrace a new 21st century clean energy future. That's what we did when we passed the Global Warming Solutions Act. At the time, we were talking about how we could both have a clean environment and stimulate our economy, generate new jobs. And it was very difficult back then for people to, quite frankly, believe us, because we were hearing a lot about what was taking place in Europe and other places throughout the world and what they were doing to bring down carbon emissions, and not as much in terms of actual best practices that we could point to. But today, in our state, as a result of the passage of this bill and the work that we've done on Beacon Hill, you can go to our own state fish and game agency, where there are 150 offices, where it's a net zero building. You can go to places like Bristol Community College that just got built, the Science Center there, which is also net zero because of what they're doing with solar and the clean energy building requirements that they put on themselves to build a building with tax dollars that at the end of the day would get us the least amount of costs in terms of energy use. And so that came about very directly because of the public comments that we heard from citizens that came to us back then. So here we are several years later, 9 years later actually, and it's about time that we came back out to ask again about the issues that you care about around global climate change and ways in which we can embrace a new clean energy future. And so what I would like to do at this point in time is turn it back to Senator Sear, although I will give my colleague, Senator Brady, the opportunity at least to say hi. And then, believe it or not, you're not going to hear from us that much at all for the rest of the evening. We will want to hear from you, and you can come up to the microphone. And we not only want to hear from you tonight, but we want to hear from you throughout this whole tour. We are planning on 9 communities right now, but I think we may actually see more than 9 by the time we get through, because there's people calling my office from different regions of the state that we have not, got slated as of yet. But we also have, and I will announce it a little later on, but you can contact us through hashtag behind me, MA Clean Future, and we want to have an opportunity for you to contact us via Twitter and other social media that we have for you to contact us on, and I will announce that as we go through the public hearing this evening. But just before we start to take the public testimony, and again, Senator Sear will be announcing people as they have signed in for testimony so that we can hear from you. But Senator Brady.
Thank you, Senator Pro Temp, Mr. Senator Mark Pacheco. I'm going to be brief because the most important thing for us as legislators is to listen, not to speak, and that's why we're doing this tour. We did some Commonwealth conversation tours across the Commonwealth to listen to the residents, and this is us bringing the State House to you. And I want to thank Senator Pacheco for all the work he's done as Vice Chairman prior on the Committee of Telecommunications and Energy, and we're looking at ways to save costs, not to increase them in our environment. And I want to thank Senator Julian Sear for hosting this. This is the first part of the tour we're hosting down at the Cape in Mashpee here tonight. And he's been doing great work at the State House on your behalf. And we know there's major issues with wastewater, erosion of the beaches down here, et cetera. So we're here to listen to you. We're here to protect and do the best we can to protect our environment all across the Commonwealth. And the first stop is tonight down here in Mashpee. So thank you for having us, and I'm going to turn it back over to Senator Sear.
Thank you, Senator Brady. And again, Senator Brady is the Vice Chair of the Telecommunications, Energy, and Utilities Committee, and that committee is already in the process of having hearings on a whole range of pieces of legislation that have been filed that will impact this subject area. So let me turn it over to Senator Sear so we can begin with the list of people that care to testify.
Terrific. So we're essentially going to have an open mic this evening. So we have a microphone in the center aisle here. Ask folks to line up behind that microphone. If you'd rather sort of stay in your seat and or are unable to kind of get to the microphone, raise your hand. We have staff that'll come over. We're going to be taking notes up here. I actually I'm going to use this iPad. So if I'm typing, it's because I'm actually taking notes, listening to your responses. And again, the real hope here is for us to listen. And if there's a specific issue you're having, you'd like us to respond, I have staff here. Senator Pacheco has staff here as well. So glad to respond to that. For those of you who are in the Twitterverse, you can share your thoughts on Twitter directly, as the senator said, at hashtag #MACleanFuture. I'm on Twitter at Julian Sear. Senator Pacheco is at Mark R. Pacheco, and Senator Brady is at Brady_works. I like that.
That's Mark with a C, M-A-R-C.
M-A-R-C-R.
M-A-R-K won't get you anywhere.
So please keep your comments to 3 minutes. We'd like to be sure that we hear from everyone. And again, we're really here to listen, to take our comments from folks here in Mashpee and across the region. I did see a sign-up list, and we have people from all across the Cape. We have folks here from Martha's Vineyard. We have folks here from Plymouth. So really grateful for this wonderful turnout. If folks want to start lining up, maybe 2 or 3 folks lining up at a time, and we'll get started. So, sir, you are on deck. And if you can just state your name and what town you live in.
David Moriarty, Falmouth, Massachusetts.
Thank you. The mic is yours, sir.
Oh, yes. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you all coming down here and for having this opportunity to speak with you about the clean, renewable energy future for Massachusetts. We're all for it, you know. We're 100% behind you, but we want to make sure that the regulations and the laws are enforced to protect us, because many of us here in Massachusetts, 21 communities, have been devastated by the clean energy future. We've been totally disrespected by our local governments. We haven't been heard from anyone. The only way we get heard is if we go out and hire a Beacon Hill law firm to protect our families and our children in our own houses. And I think that's just despicable. And it's unacceptable to me and many Massachusetts citizens, and we're not gonna stand for it anymore. So you're gonna have to deal with us either in public or in the courts, and hopefully we don't have to spend all our money on Beacon Hill lawyers. We can build a new senior center for our town, because that's what we need. We don't need to be spending millions and millions of dollars on litigation, which absolutely go nowhere. So we're very upset, and we want to know, what are you going to do about it? Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. And sir, is this in specific regard to the wind turbines in Falmouth, or more broadly?
21 communities throughout Massachusetts have been devastated, from Cape Cod all the way to the Berkshire.
Okay, thank you, sir.
In between.
Next.
G.M. Woodwell. I live in Falmouth. I'm a scientist, and I've been involved in thinking about this issue for 50 years, doing research on it. Let me congratulate you on having this series of meetings. I think this is very important. It's the first such thing I've ever attended. I'm delighted to attend. But I want to bring a sense of urgency to this topic. It isn't climatic change, it's climatic destruction. And it's far advanced. It holds in it, if we continue on the present course, or any course that is officially recognized now, the destruction of civilization within the lives of our children now alive. That's a pretty serious matter. If you wonder about the form it will take, simply look at Africa at the moment, as it warms and dries in response to the present 1-degree change in the average temperature of the Earth. People lose their livelihoods in the southern part of the Sahel, in Central Africa. Can't live there anymore. There is no agriculture. Lake Chad dries up, and they have to migrate. And they do migrate, looking for a place to live. The upshot of that is the European Union lost Britain because of the immigration from Europe, from Eastern Europe, Middle States, and from Africa. That's just the first increment. We're headed for large areas in the world with 120 degrees for part of the year, Fahrenheit. Well, those changes are totally unacceptable. The answer is, in part, getting rid of fossil fuels. But all of them in a short time, and replacing them with renewable energy. Now, that is not a bad world. In fact, as you've suggested, it's a very attractive world, a world in which municipalities stand on their own 2 feet for energy from several renewable sources, and they can look to their own resources locally for food. And if we succeed in abandoning fossil fuels, we still have to reduce the temperature of the Earth back to something that was close to 1900, unless we are willing to take great changes in the Earth. So my note of urgency is to encourage you on the route that you are traveling, but to intensify the thought and look toward a brand new world, a world of renewable energy and renewable resources and stable agriculture. All of those are attractive aspects, and we can live with them, and you can brag about them. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. I would also encourage those that are testifying tonight in terms of the broad themes, because obviously I'm in 100% in agreement with what you have just said, but we need to be implementing specific tools legislatively to get what we're talking about broadly accomplished. And so I would be interested in hearing from all of you that testify in terms of what pieces of legislation you may be supporting, or in general topic areas that we should be dealing with, you know, so that it would better inform me and the committee as we move forward. But anyway, next, sir. Please state your name and let us know where you're from.
My name is James Garb. Excuse me. I live in Yarmouthport. I want to thank you also for holding these forums. This is a great opportunity. I want to limit my remarks to 2 concrete things. The first is Eversource's proposed rate increases. I know this is still under discussion. I know that it's been opposed by the DPU. It's been opposed by the Attorney General's office. But basically, what they propose to do would be a disincentive to people going with solar power. And what we should be doing, as you mentioned, Senator Pacheco, is we should be incentivizing solar power and other forms of alternative energy. But their proposal to go with demand charges to increased fixed charges are going to make it less desirable to for people to invest in solar. The second issue is a big one. I think nuclear has no place in a clean energy future. Just the fact that there is no greenhouse gases coming from a smokestack at Pilgrim, there's a lot of energy that goes into mining, refining, milling, and transporting the uranium to these nuclear power plants, and there'll be energy that's needed to someday, hopefully, remove the spent nuclear fuel and put it in a repository. You know, we were sold a bill of goods with nuclear, I think, back in the 50s. It was supposed to be too cheap to meter, and the government was going to take care of the nuclear waste. Well, it's very expensive. It wouldn't be profitable without large government subsidies. And there's no place, no country in the world has yet found a good solution to storing the nuclear fuel after it's been used. And there are other issues to clean energy. I mean, Pilgrim dumps 500 million gallons of hot water into the Cape Cod Bay every day, and it pollutes the environment with low-level radioactive waste, both into the air and into the water. It's in violation of the Clean Water Act, so it's a complex picture. But there are other options available, and I think nuclear should not be, or Pilgrim specifically, should not be included in the clean energy standard. And the way it was originally proposed, it wouldn't be. I don't know if that's subject to change because it's an older facility, and so it wouldn't qualify for clean energy credits. If Pilgrim gets clean energy credits, it'll get a lot of them because it's a big producer, and it'll sell them to the dirtiest polluters, and they'll be able to keep on polluting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is David Dell. I'm a resident of East Falmouth. I wanted to briefly discuss two topics. One, the first is climate change, extreme weather events, and emergency responses. During Hurricane Bob and Blizzard Nemo, we lost power for extensive periods on Cape Cod from 2 to 7 or 8 days. And that proves to be a hardship on seniors like myself. So that we need to find some way to better address these situations. I mean, I live in a neighborhood that has underground utilities, yet I still lose power when it goes out on Sandwich Road, which is a major thoroughfare near where I live. A second aspect of this is that our flood insurance rates have increased, and many towns here in the Cape Cod use the community rating system so that they take climate adaptation action in exchange for getting lower insurance rates in the 100-year floodplain. In addition, people outside of this area, like myself, face rising insurance rates and $10,000 or $20,000 deductibles for wind damage. And this stresses a lot of people that have limited incomes. And 40% of our residents are in the state fare system, so they're already receiving state support. Another aspect of this, of course, is that even though we're going to have wind energy out in the ocean, and it's likely it's going to be brought onshore here on Cape Cod, we actually are going to send all this energy off the regional grid and not be able to use any of it during the periods in which we lose power after northeasters or hurricanes. So that we have many practical problems to address as a result of this extreme weather events, whether they be northeasters or occasional hurricanes. I was just going to mention I moved here from Slidell, Louisiana, and it got hit by Hurricane Katrina, which had a 17-foot storm surge, and they lost power for 4 or 5 weeks. So in my view, Cape Cod is totally unprepared for dealing with this kind of disaster. We need to incorporate this in our planning. Finally, since we're supposed to get a smart grid through the efforts of Eversource and the state, we need to find a way to make better use of solar energy and wind energy in our grid so we can make use of this here at home and not send all of it off to the regional electric grid. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And as the next person is approaching the microphone, I did want to say that one of our first things that we did today was to visit over at Woods Hole with the U.S. Geological Survey and to see all the work that they are doing in terms of resiliency issues up and around the coastal areas here on Cape Cod. We were all very impressed with what we saw and what many of the institutes are doing to plan for those extreme weather events and to think of ways in which we can plan ahead of time to avoid them. One of the bills that we have filed at the state level is a comprehensive adaptation management plan, which passed the Senate a few times and has not become law yet, but it is something that we are working on, and it tied into some of the comments I've heard so far, but I just wanted to make sure you were all aware of that. One other thing, I just wanted to say that if people that are home watching this event, or people when they leave here tonight and they want to stay in touch with us, we want to make sure you go on to malegislature.gov. That's malegislature.gov / clean energy future. That's / clean energy future. malegislature.gov / clean energy future, and you'll be able to communicate with us via that link. Okay? Ma'am, please come forward, state your name, and tell us where you live.
Yeah, Lilia Franton, and I live in North Falmouth. I think everything that's been said tonight by the participants, by the speakers, has been very important. So I just have very little to add, and probably in agreement with everything that has been said. I think you can tell by my shirt.
Shut Pilgrim.
Shut Pilgrim.
I see that.
And in addition to hoping that the state continues to make sure that we residents are safe, that we shut Pilgrim safely, get the storage done safely, or as safely as can be done. But in addition, I think we can't emphasize the importance of clean energy unless it's properly defined. And I think it's important that there be included in explanations about clean energy that nuclear is not clean, it's not green, it's not renewable, it's not safe, and it is destructive. So in addition to being a tremendous supporter of solar, I'm also hoping that we can really clear up the ideas that have been promulgated by the corporations that nuclear is clean and green and renewable. It is not. So I hope that that information gets clearly stated so that residents know the choices that they can make. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. And
As a point of information, I can see in the audience many Cape Codders who have been pushing on this issue of this Croton nuclear power plant. So the special decommissioning panel that was established in the state budget last year, they are meeting for the first time on Wednesday, May 24th. It's going to be at Plymouth South High School in Plymouth at 6 p.m. Actually, my predecessor, Senator Ian Wolf, has been appointed by the Senate President to serve on that panel. I know he will be a vocal force, but for those of you who've been involved in the work in Pilgrim, I think it's really important that we continue to show up. What happens from both the timeline of closure, but also then the decommissioning of this corroding facility, and what happens there is what happens there and what's deliberated on by this group will make a really big difference for health and safety in this region for decades to come. So Wednesday, May 24th, it's the first meeting of the decommissioning panel.
And just so you'll know, my hometown, where I live, is in the city of Taunton, which just happens to be on the evacuation route for Pilgrim. And so I've dealt with this issue for a number of years, and certainly the energy that is generated as a result of Pilgrim, that carbon emissions are not generated at the facility, but when Pilgrim comes offline, hopefully soon, the problem that we have is that we need to make sure that we're replacing that energy with energy that does not have emissions connected to it. And that's one of the reasons why we're here tonight, because that's a big piece of our energy mix that needs to find replacement, either in lowering, and also by lowering our greenhouse gas emissions, whether we're doing that through energy efficiency, solar, wind, offshore wind, whatever we do, we need to replace that energy that is lost. Sir.
Thank you. Again, I thank you all for coming and for having this forum and the others around the state. I think they're very important. One quick thing on nuclear.
Not
If you
my
could
fav-
introduce yourself and where
Oh,
you're
I'm
from, please.
sorry, yes. I'm Glenn Rowland. I live in Falmouth. While I'm basically retired, I worked in transportation and environmental planning for most of my professional career in the public and private sector. One quick note on nuclear, all, and including Pilgrim, all, because I worked on doing updates, all nuclear power plants are required to have an evacuation time estimate study. That's identifying a network, as you mentioned, for evacuation in the event of ultimate disaster at a nuclear power plant to make sure that the resident population can get out of town safely to far enough away from the event. Thankfully, we haven't had to put that to use. But Southeast Mass, and particularly the Cape and Plymouth County, have been growing considerably in the last few years, and I hope that study has well been updated. I'm sorry to say I don't know enough about it. I did work on an evacuation time estimate study for a consulting firm that was responsible for doing one out in Illinois, the Zion nuclear power plant out there. So some of the presumptions in terms of the highways and time to get out of town may or may not be legitimate. So I would suggest somebody look into Pilgrim just to see when that was last updated and what the details were. Just quickly, because I know you've covered them, but wind turbines in Falmouth, I'd say the biggest problem was with a lack of adequate pre-construction siting study done for the impacts of the wind turbine. And I say for any future construction or consideration in construction for turbines, that be carefully looked at in terms of noise impact and impact on the resident population. It was constructed on public land, and I think they thought there wouldn't be a problem, but the shadowing impacts once the turbines went into operation and the noise, which some people are more subject to than others, have been significant. And it's still an issue, and it's better to get that resolved before you construct them, obviously, because afterwards it's very expensive to deal with the consequences. In terms of solar, on a very good note in Falmouth, there's been some great utilization of extensive solar fields, both at the landfill site and also most recently at the new hockey rink that was constructed in Falmouth. There they utilized the parking area, and so they made sure it was covered parking, but the covered parking, while that has its benefits, all has solar panels on the top to generate solar power, electrical power for the town. A couple of quick things on the wind turbines, as I mentioned, should be cited. Also, the wind turbines offshore can generate a lot of power, but there is also potential environmental impact there because of, and it's not really trivial, but visual impact. And that needs to be studied carefully, make sure that that's not impairing the views, the wonderful views of the sound, and the reason tourism is a big factor here. There's also concern about wildlife, that birds and all, which may be not aware of the wind turbines and can be impacted by them, or ships that might go off course, and that could have major impacts. I'll just finish a couple of smaller things, but still significant. Solar farms. I happen to have a house which is very
heavily shaded. It's nice through most of the year, but heavily shaded and therefore not a real good candidate for solar panels on the house. But and many people, other people I'm sure have that too. But there are solar farms which can utilize a network, utilizing, for instance, a solar farm out at the landfill site or another regional site, maybe in a neighborhood, where people who don't have good solar panel access on their house can hook into a system that can allow them to utilize aggregate collection of solar energy at a better site. Also, I've worked on projects such as solar greenhouses. That's passive solar that can add extra warmth during the winter months, cut down on the use of fossil fuels or oil and other fuels that might be used. And one last thing, earth shelter construction. I think that might even be better in the Midwest area where the tornadoes are a real threat. But earth shelter can utilize the insulating effects of the earth for new construction to build houses that have less visual impact and more energy efficiency in terms of their year-round operation. So just a few ideas. I thank you for your time, and I look forward to other ideas here.
Thank you very much. And just so you are aware, with community solar, where people can't actually utilize their own property, there is a significant movement all across the state to try to empower local communities. And you may hear a little bit more on that from testimony from the Vineyard and some other folks that are involved with this type of a movement. And there's legislation that is filed to look at this and try to make sure that the citizens and communities are empowered to be able to move forward with exactly the way the gentleman just described for community solar initiatives. Yes, sir. Your name and...
Yes, Charlie Orloff, Mashpee, Executive Director at Blue Hill Observatory in Milton.
Okay.
Senator Brady, thank you for coming tonight. Senator Pacheco, thank you for chairing this committee. Extremely important committee. Obviously, that's the work that we do there. Senator Sear, it's just nice calling you Senator.
Thank you.
I'm going to be very specific. Massachusetts is in a tremendous contradiction right now. We house the home of the oldest continuously operating weather station, climate station in North America. 132 years, an unbroken record, recognized all over the world for climate change. The charts, if you go on our website, are just dramatic of how the temperature is rising. On the other hand, we are one of 2 states that does not have an Office of Climatology or a state climatologist. I just talked to the American Association of Climatologists today. Tennessee just passed legislation we will be the only state in the United States of America that will not have a climatologist or an Office of Climatology. This is incredibly embarrassing. The legislature has done a lot to try to correct this, and I know that, Senator Pacheco. For the last 4, maybe 5, correct me, years, money has been put in the budget, not a lot, $100,000. Unfortunately, there's an earmark, which is too easy to get rid of. But the legislature has tried to do something about this, and our last 2 governors have vetoed it every single time. My question to you is, what can the legislature do to ensure that we're not the only state in the United States without an Office of Climatology?
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. And as you know, we have authorized that office. We've
I know you have.
put in place under the Environmental Bond Bill significant resources
I know.
to not only outfit an office, but a whole strategy relative to higher education and a climatologist position so that we could begin planning, not only dealing with the research part of what that job would entail, but also linking into other higher education institutions and private institutions and federal institutions like the U.S. Geological Survey or Woods Hole Oceanographic, or you can just insert in the blank
Right.
all the names of the institutions to work together. And as you said, the executive branch has vetoed this or used 9C authority in the past to not allow it to come to fruition. I can only tell you that I give you my commitment that we're going to continue to try to get this done, because I think it is hugely important. I think this is significantly important to have it done. We should not be without an official climatologist.
Or
in
Office
the-
of
in the
Climatology,
state.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that, by the way, I'm not advocating for Blue Hill Observatory at all. We don't want
Yeah.
that. This would be University of Massachusetts
Right.
that would be in charge
Yeah,
of
the
this.
University of Massachusetts, the flagship campus at Amherst,
Absolutely.
actually houses, as you know, the whole climate, center from the federal government for all of the northeast part
Exactly.
of the United States of America.
It's such a
So
logical
it's
institution
It's
to
a
do
logical
this.
thing to do. That's why we did it in the legislature. And maybe, given the administration's recent, I'm talking recent within the last 2 years, position on a lot more of this. For example, the governor has signed on to the Paris Agreement, has signed on with us to bring down the CO2 emissions down to 25% below the 1990 levels, 80% below by 2050 levels. So he has signed on to a lot of these things. What we're looking for the administration to do now is actually take some additional action so we can actually get down to those numbers, and we will try again.
Yeah, good luck, and
this
I
year.
hope,
That's
I
all
hope
I
you're
can
successful.
tell you we'll do.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Yep, and I would add, actually, during late in the Patrick administration, this was something that was proposed and I think almost moved to be hired when I was at the time at the Department of Public Health, and there was a pretty expansive proposal, I think over $2 million of efforts around this. That was not realized, and I think has not been supported that proposal fully by this administration, but a proposal very much is out there, and I think we should be moving towards realizing not only that specific position and also that office, but a whole suite of other activities associated with health, public safety, resiliency, assistance for local municipalities. So this is a big lost opportunity, and thank you for raising it.
Thank you.
And I think the rationale, just so you'll know too, I think the rationale that I've heard from the administration is that we have, scientists that are climate specialists in a whole range of areas within the higher education institutional settings. That's true, but there's not one person that has the responsibility for it, and that's what we want to make sure we have accountability and do that. So we'll continue to work on it, sir. Thank you. Yes, sir.
How you going? My name's Shay Paxton from Mashpee. I got a lot of concerns here that I do believe the destruction of the planet is real. I'm not fully convinced on climate change or these other things that people like to call it. Your solutions are absolutely insanity to me. Geoengineering the climate is genocide. And we got NASA who's involved in geoengineering. We have the Carnegie Council who is involved in geoengineering. And I think this whole stuff is absolutely crazy. I mean, NASA stands for never a straight answer. I mean, you can look at what methane gas is doing to our planet, and that is never brought up. Factory farming is destroying our planet. I don't know how many people out here eat meat on a daily basis, but meat is the #1 cause to global warming, if that's what you want to call it. Also, I don't understand why the elites are buying waterfront property if these properties are going to be underwater. To me, that's a very bad investment. And also, I don't know how big Antarctica is, but I'm pretty sure there's a treaty where there's about 80 countries have signed that no one's allowed into Antarctica. And I'm sure that supposedly we've been to the moon, but we haven't been to the edge of Antarctica. And to me, that is crazy. And I mean, we can go down to Mobile and Mashpee right now, and we can see all the products and how corporate America packages their material and how long it takes for these packages to biodegrade. And the packaging that's going on today is insanity. And the greed of corporate America is beyond what anybody, I think, has in their eyes. And I mean, we can get into Monsanto's, we can get into Agenda 21, we can get into vaccines that are held in special courts that is not told to the American people. And kids are dying from these vaccines, and they're held in special courts that we're not allowed in. And I think we have real answers that need to come. And this, I mean, the destruction of the planet is 100% truth, but we have no real solutions. Solar energy, what about perpetual energy? Anybody know Nikola Tesla? Has anybody tried to replicate any of his things? I've seen people have in the government, they come and they shut you down. I mean, I know I'm missing a lot of points here. I'm a little nervous, don't like to speak in front of people, but I think we need real solutions. Everybody wants to talk about nuclear. Well, look at who Barack Obama, the cleanest, America's most energy-friendly president, gave Iran a nuclear deal. So let's talk about the nuclear deal. If nuclear's so bad, why did the greenest president give Iran a nuclear deal?
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Hi.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Teresa Willender. I'm from Sandwich. I'm going to be moving to Mashpee soon. So yeah, I'm going to go off of animal agriculture. So animal agriculture is the slaughter of animals for human use, for eating them and making products. And in 2006, the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations presented information that animal agriculture is the leading cause of global warming. So it's now 2017, that was 2006. The fact that nothing has been done to try to change that is despicable to me, because that's the leading cause. It's 51% of greenhouse gas emissions leading to global warming. It's the largest contributor, and nothing is being done. And the way we're going to start is from small to large. So you guys need to bring this information and start talking to people, because that's the only way it's going to be done. Because the amount of water, the amount of land that is being used to... So the Amazon rainforest is going to be gone in 10 years. That's the lungs of the world. And it's going to be gone because of the amount of feed crops we need. An acre of land is cut down every second of the Amazon rainforest because we want to grow feed for cows. And that's disgusting, because we're not going to have the Amazon rainforest anymore. The amount of food that we grow for animals to just feed us could be feeding 8 billion people in other countries. We're starving other countries to feed Western civilization. I'm sorry, but the fact that this information has been known since 2006 and nothing has been done is really sad. It means we don't care about the other countries. We care about ourselves. We're supposed to be helping the world, and we're not. And we start here. And I'm telling you the information, and I hope you guys can research yourself. I'm not going to tell you everything because I don't have enough time. But animal agriculture is the leading cause, and it's leading towards global warming more than transportation combined. So and we're not going to get rid of cars. We're not going to get rid of anything transportation, but we can get rid of food, of meat and dairy. We don't need that. We only eat that because of taste. You do not need that. You don't need it for protein. You don't need it for anything. It's all lies. You can live off of a vegan diet, and people don't realize this, but it's the truth. And we need to start advocating for this, and we need to start telling people, and we start small, and we go big. That's how you do it.
Thank you very much.
you.
Hi there. My name is Amanda Converse, and I live in Marston's Mills. My background is in the environmental field, and I own an eco boutique in Hyannis. And I personally think wind turbines are a beautiful sight to see on the horizon. And I also recommend everybody cut back on their meat consumption as the one thing they can do for the planet. But today, I am here representing 350.org MA, and if you're not familiar with the organization or what 350 is, 350 is the
Could
parts...
I interrupt you just for a second and ask you, could you just turn that microphone just back towards you just a little bit more?
Is that better?
That's good. Just speak, so that everybody that comes up, when you're looking at these round microphones, you can speak right into the center of it. That would be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
So 350 parts per million is the threshold that scientists believe that the Earth can sustain in our atmosphere of threshold of CO2. And right now we're at 410. So 350 is dedicated to advocating for change in terms of legislative measures. And I wanted to just come up here and make a plug for carbon pricing, potentially, and I tweeted a link to a really great podcast from Brookings Institution that I heard that could explain it. But a lot of European countries have done it, and Canada has done it, and they've done it very successfully, and it's been very good at, you place a tax on industry, which then will trickle down to consumers, but it will take care of it charges for the carbon emissions, and I think that's a definite solution that I and 350 Mass are advocating for. So.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, Amanda.
And 350.org, Amanda does such marvelous work. They do some great work, and I thank you for being here tonight. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name's Karen Gibbities, and I live in Buzzards Bay, and thank you for having this forum tonight. I appreciate your desire to protect the planet, and it's a really good idea to utilize the input of all these brilliant people in the room. And I'm kind of awestruck by their forward thinking and their brilliance, and I wish I had something as brilliant to say, but I don't. It's a little more close to home. I want to speak to something on a smaller scale, I guess, but locally. I think that protecting the planet should include protecting the people that live on it, and I'm one of those people, and I'm walking testimony that I'm not being protected by renewable energy at this point in time. My house is in Buzzards Bay on the border of Plymouth, and the town of Plymouth permitted an industrial wind turbine project that I live next to. And this project did not meet the regulations of the town of Bourne, where I live, nor did it meet the regulations of the Cape Cod Commission, which governs the town of Bourne. And the Cape Cod Commission also purchased the energy from the wind energy project that didn't meet their own regulations. We have tried hiring attorneys, we have tried speaking to senators, we have tried speaking to legislators, and unfortunately, because of the Global Warming Solutions Act, I believe that government is motivated to move forward without considering the people that are being affected negatively by the turbines. A few years ago, I would have been in here saying much of what I've heard so far and telling you that I think renewable energy is a wonderful option and a necessity, and it probably is. But I can tell you that although it's not the popular opinion in the room, my neighbors are sick. I don't sleep. Our pets are sick. We are too close, and we can't find anybody that can govern this situation to help protect us. We are not entitled to mitigation funds because we don't live in the town of Plymouth. However, we're closer than all but 2 properties in the town of Plymouth to any one of the wind turbines. So we can't get any help there. We've attended meetings in the town of Plymouth. We are not town of Plymouth residents, so we don't have too many options there also. The turbines need to be sited properly. They're not, in my opinion. They're 1,400 feet from my house. My bedroom windows shake some nights. The dog climbs up on the counter, which has never happened ever until now. We come home and we hear the whoop, whoop, whoop of a noise that never existed before. And once again, they are so close to our house, yet they were permitted in the next town. And there is no regulation at this point in time to protect the bordering towns' rights from a project like this. And I think before you move forward with other forms of renewable energy, you have to consider all of the residents and protect the planet, but protect the people who live on it. We are not protected. Our property value has decreased. We cannot sell the house and recover our investment and have it be appropriate. We have the nuisance of noise. I can speak firsthand to my neighbors who are sick with nausea, vertigo, and inability to focus. If they leave their property for a long enough period of time, they get better. We have a young family whose child can't sleep. This is new since they moved into the neighborhood. I'm really disappointed that we have to be here to complain because what you're doing is such a positive thing, but our voices aren't being heard and we have no more funds to sue, which has also been unproductive. So if there's anything you can do to help us, we would appreciate it. And the chances of you helping us probably are slim, but please don't do this to another community because it's devastating for us. And although there's only a few of us, comparatively to the general population, is it okay to sacrifice a few because you think this is good for many? Because it has not been good for us, and we feel like we've been sacrificed. And we vote for you, and we think what you're doing is great, and now personally, we're devastated. So please keep that in mind when you're making these decisions because it affects many.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Let me just clarify one thing that you said to make sure we have it on the public record. The Global Warming Solutions Act was actually enacted after a lot of the siting had taken place in Massachusetts. It is true that the Global Warming Solutions Act requires that greenhouse gas emissions come down, not by any one specific measure, but trying to get greenhouse gas emissions down, which is in everyone's best interest in their public health. I agree with you that siting issues are the issues that should really be looked at, especially on land wind in particular, and with other types of generation that you look at with renewable energy technologies. Those issues, many of them are in the zoning related area, which I know you know more about than you care to at this point in time, but that's local zoning and local control, except for those areas where it's on a piece of public property or a state, again, public property, where they would be able to go forward under other provisions of state law. So siting is a critical issue. I hear you. I've heard about it before. I actually have heard Mr. Moriarty's testimony. I think this is the third time. So I'm very, very familiar with the issue and have read some of the testimony that Mr. Moriarty has given us on other occasions before other hearings that we've had. And I, for one, am in favor of looking at a better siting law that we can have in Massachusetts. But every time that is proposed, both proponents and opponents of some of the technologies are out there actually testifying against the siting statutes that have been proposed. So we'll see what happens as we go forward. But I thank you very much for your testimony today. Yes, sir.
Good evening. I'm Zenas Crocker from the town of Barnstable. Thank you all for coming, as everybody else has relayed. My tact is a little bit different. My concerns, a pivot to what's going to happen going forward. We had a nice slide presentation on some of the things that we have to consider, which may or may not be worst case in terms of how high the water will come up, for instance. I'm concerned about home and business owners and what the environmental planning is going to be going forward. We're going to lose a lot of property, there's no doubt about it. What are we going to do to address this as it starts to happen? If it's going to happen just over the next 80 years and we see 6 feet of rise, how are we going to deal with that? How are we going to deal with the impact on fresh water and our aquifers, particularly here on Cape Cod? Different issue, but certainly a major issue for us. Another gentleman brought up storm planning, and certainly now is the critical time for us to be looking at that. If we hit a high tide and a big storm and 20 feet, God forbid, we've got a major disaster on our hand. So do we actually need to plan for retreat from the waterfront? I would argue that we need contingency plans for exactly that, on public lands, on private lands. How do we deal with that? The fisheries are changing. One of the things I've heard in the rounds that I've been making is about southern fish appearing in our waters, and they get thrown out. What a waste. These are the kind of considerations I think that we need to be thinking about now. Climate change and clean water have enormous impacts. So we're heating up the water. We talked about the potential for 120-degree weather. I've seen some studies saying Boston alone could have 30 days of over 100, 90 days of over 90-degree water temperatures, air temperatures, excuse me. What's the impact going to be as we continue really to not address the nitrogen and phosphorus loads here on Cape Cod in the fresh and salt water? So these are the things I'd love to see you all take and consider. Thank you very much.
Let me, before you leave the microphone, let me just say that one of the things that we've worked on for the last couple of years, and we've actually got it passed in the Senate a few times, and thankfully the governor has actually taken a version of what we passed, because it hasn't become law yet, but he has put it in an executive order to his agencies. And a big piece of what we passed in the Senate, it's called the Comprehensive Adaptation Management Plan. That's the name of the bill. I'm not sure if we have the bill number, Kyle, off the top of your head. I don't think we have it with us, but it's the Comprehensive Adaptation Management Plan, the CAMP legislation, it's noted as on Beacon Hill. And it basically sets in place a strategy where all agencies of state government are mandated to start to develop the plan you're talking about. Across agency, transportation agencies, public safety agencies, the environmental agencies, working across agency, no longer in the silo, but across agency, to come up with a comprehensive adaptation management plan to look at comprehensive sustainability issues and to put in place that type of a plan. And we include, because we're talking about extreme weather events as well, we we include public safety in that as part of the legislation. So that's one of the things we will be working on this year, and we'll see how far we get this year. But for those of you that are interested in that and some of the issues that the gentleman was speaking about, when the legislation comes forth, I know that Senator Sear has been supportive of this type of strategy. I know he'll let his constituents know that it's out there, and it's really helpful for this type of dialogue to take place, because when it's up for enactment in the Senate, and then when it goes over to the House, we also need equal support in both branches of government and before the executive branch at the end of the day to get it to become law, so that we can actually have the type of planning that you're really talking about, because it is indeed comprehensive. There's a lot of things happening, not only with ocean acidification and warming, what's happening, what we saw today with the U.S. Geological Survey and what's taking place along the coast, property owners with flood insurance and not being able to get insurance at all because of the extreme weather events and the wind levels. One thing for sure, the insurance agencies don't bet on, and that's a certainty. When they know it's a certainty that we're going to have these issues to deal with, well, they make sure that they're not going to be on the short end of the stick of that, right? And so we are also working on that in the legislature, looking at alternative ways to make sure that people still have insurance relative to flood insurance and those types of things. And it's all part of this issue. So that's why this issue is so complex and comprehensive, and I thank you for being here today and underlying some of the issues that you see as concerning to you, because it's also concerning to us. That's why we're here tonight, and we'll see what we can do.
Well, that's great to hear, Senator, and thank you all again, and that would be a great topic for a future town hall.
Yep.
It's great to see you here. We'd like to see you here again talking about this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir.
So, I would just add two quick things. On wastewater, the Cape delegation has been working very closely on this in a bipartisan fashion, as we have for years. So we're keeping to push at that. And actually, you brought up an interesting piece around the planning. Comprehensive zoning reform is something that is being taken up. The Senate passed it last session. The House is likely to take it up this session. I actually sit on I share the Community Development Small Business Committee, which has one of the bills, and I sit on municipalities as the other. And just from your suggestion, I think that we might want to look at some sort of form of having municipalities and municipal planning taking a look at climate resiliency, especially for coastal communities, because, you know, we're going to have to deal with it sooner or later. And it might be something I'm interested in, just for those comments. The other thing I would add, if you are someone who would prefer to remain in your seat and offer remarks, just please raise your hand, and we will bring a microphone to you. All right, so don't be shy, raise your hand, and someone from our team will be right over with the mic.
Good evening.
Thank you.
My name is Catherine Elder, and I live in Falmouth. Is this good? Mm-hmm. Okay. I was listening to this poor woman over here from Plymouth tell her story about turbines in her neighborhood, which is pretty much the same story that I had about my neighborhood. Our town put up a couple of turbines in a public use district without any permitting, and we had to take it to the highest level of court in this state to gain access to the bylaw, which would give us the same protections as everyone else in the town. But it has had a profoundly negative impact on me and my family living in close proximity to an industrial-sized turbine. They're too big to be sited this close to people. I want to tell you that I have worked over 30 years supporting climate change science at Woods Hole Oceanographic. I think that turbines are beautiful, but when they impact people's lives like they have mine, and they have reached in and taken my ability to sleep at night or prevented me from enjoying the use of my property, I want people to understand, especially you, that there's a negative side to this that most people here will never understand. They can understand a barking dog, but when you try to talk to them about how you feel sick from the sound pollution from a turbine, they look at you like you're trying to pollute the world, and they don't give you the respect that I think that people need to have. And I think that we need to treat each other with respect going forward so that we can work together to solve these huge problems. We can't do it by cutting people out and making them take it for the team. We have to go forward together as communities and as a state to solve these incredibly large problems. And by ruining people's lives with the impact of this technology is not helping anything. So my message is to take a look at the siting, take a look at the impact of this legislation that you have, and make sure that you're not taking something so fundamental as our ability to enjoy and have a home. That's important. Not sure what your legislation was that you were speaking about earlier is relative to the Green Communities Act. I think they're two separate things. But,
They are two separate things.
but
yes.
Governor Patrick's Green Communities Act had some negative fallout that people should recognize. Energy has a downside, no matter how it's produced, and wind energy has a downside. I want to say specifically going forward that we should look towards subsidizing solar, particularly point source generation. That is where you get the most bang for the buck in every sense, and I'm talking about carbon emissions. You want to generate it where you use it. The minute you connect it to the grid, you've lost 75% of it in transmission. So we should be incentivizing point source generation of renewable energies over these municipal aggregate, even offshore wind is going to connect to a grid. So that would be my specific request to you, is to look at that. And the second specific request going forward has to do with agriculture and producing food in this state. I think it's part of our clean energy future. Climate change and global warming is having a tremendous impact on our ability to produce food, and we should be supporting it locally as much as we can. So if there's a component of that kind of support that can come from a clean energy future, we should be looking for it and supporting it.
Thank you very much. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Rona Robinson. I now live in Hyannis, but from 1954 to 1979, I had the beautiful opportunity of growing up in Nantasket, Massachusetts, and witnessing two beautiful turbines that went up, one at Hull High School and one on the coast near the beaches in Hull. I sat on the board to help those turbines go up, and I was really proud. They weren't near houses, and that was fortunate. I also helped a wind turbine go up in Howard, Massachusetts, that's no longer working. That's not my problem, but anyways, it was a foreign model, a Tupelo model that was built in Europe. I love wind turbines, and I think there's a future in them, but you gotta worry about the problems that come with them. I have a degree in environmental energy from Cape Cod Community College, and I fought long and hard to get that degree, and I want to see it go forward, and I want to see other things happen as far as wind turbines and as far as solar and as far as taking care of our disappearing coastlines that are happening all over Cape Cod and other regions nearby. So those are my three concerns. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the work in the environmental area. Please keep it up. Yes, sir.
Hello, I'm Brian Carroll. I live in Katuitt, Massachusetts. I first want to just say, kind of echoing Dr. Woodwell's sense of urgency, that you know, the situation that we have down in Washington maybe adds another layer to that sense of urgency. And I just want to really encourage you guys to push this issue forward now, because the country needs Massachusetts to be a leader on this, and that's you all. A couple other little kind of smaller details I wanted to bring up. I know transportation is not exactly kind of part of your bailiwick, but bike paths on Cape Cod and bike transportation in general seems like something that we can do a much better job of encouraging. I bike to work a few days a week from Cotuit to Mashpee here, and Route 28 is a really hard road to bike on. I would encourage you to take a drive on it sometime, and it's like this kind of linchpin road, and the more that we can do to encourage kind of safe bike paths. Falmouth, of course, is like a wonderful example that's now basically a tourist stop, and people use it to commute. The more of that, the better, probably. Second thing, I know this has come up before, and I'm not sure where it stands now, but this is sort of another sort of small point source thing, but I know the state in the past has had a program encouraging clean wood-burning stoves for homes. I would encourage you to keep going with that. I think that's something that, you know, is fairly common around here, and kind of gets us away from the nuclear and the wind, I suppose. And the last thing, just to echo the point about 350's kind of push for a carbon tax, maybe that's, if we're thinking about big steps and the sense of urgency, that would be something that we could all use. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And just so you are aware, and again, so 350 is aware, and I think they are, but I'm not sure because I haven't heard that in testimony, but there are a number of carbon pricing bills that are filed in the legislature. Some of them are very specific and very prescriptive, and there are others just that essentially hand over to the administration and say, if you don't meet your requirements, then it triggers a price to go in place. So the administration is saying they will meet the requirements, and there's a bill actually that I filed that says that if you don't meet the requirements, a price automatically goes in place. They would have to, you know, phase that in, but we would start to put a price on pollution, you know, so that this is something we're looking at, but we are also specifically taking a look at all these other strategies that are out there. And I just wanted to, I forgot to mention when the young woman was up here talking about a decentralized grid, that we are looking at that in terms of grid modernization, but also being able to have that decentralized grid. And a big piece of that we're looking at right now is storage. Because if you add storage to solar, or storage to offshore wind, or storage to another technology, it's a game changer for everything in the future. And so we are hearing that message, and we're listening, and we're trying to come up with the right set of strategies to put it into law as we move forward. Next, please.
Thank you, Senator. Richard Andre, West Tisbury from Martha's Vineyard. A couple points, policy points. It was mentioned today about the Eversource rate case. And it reminds me, when I think about electricity, that it's both supply and demand. And previously, with gas-fired power plants or nuclear-fired power plants, the demand side was a flat line, and it was our supply that changed. When we came home and turned on the air conditioning at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, put the washing machine on, or the lights on at night. One of the things that, or one of the challenges that renewable energy brings is its intermittency. It's kind of, you can't just have that supply on. And you mentioned storage as a key component to help mitigate that. But another one is the implementation of time varying rates. In other words, incentivizing consumers to use electricity when it's available or cheap to help levelize that demand curve.
Right.
So it was mentioned earlier about the Eversource rate case, and I don't know where the legislature would weigh in on this, but one of the things that Eversource is resisting is implementing smart meters on all of the homes. And they're kind of taking a bit of a cop-out, saying that it's, people can opt in rather than making it mandatory for them to put on all of the residents' homes. If they did that, that would give all of us consumers a very powerful choice to buy electricity when it's cheapest and to change our behaviors. So, for example, with offshore wind, it blows, one of the times it blows its hardest and strongest is at midnight in the middle of the winter. And in fact, wholesale electricity prices at that time could be close to zero. And we can be incentivized to turn our dishwashers and program them to come on and do our laundry and things like this, but you need those meters to do it. So I just wanted to advocate for the use of smart meters, if we can advocate that at a legislative level, and especially with the rate case going on with Eversource, that's an opportunity to do that. The second point I wanted to make was about a bill that has been filed in the Senate and on the House side. It's a bill called Community Empowerment, and it was mentioned earlier about empowering communities. The state does a lot of great things as far as setting standards for renewable energy usage, and I heard you mention earlier the Renewable Portfolio Standards, the RPS. Well, right now, that's about 11% at the state level, so that means all of the electricity we all consume is 11% renewable, not including nuclear power, just the Class 1 renewables. And I know there's talk about going further in that at a state level, but this bill would enable communities to do it at a municipal level. So, for example, if the town of Falmouth or the town of West Tisbury, where I live, want to be 100% renewable, there is currently no option for us to do that. This bill would enable a community to make those decisions locally. I think it would improve on issues like siting, because it would be local decisions that should be put into place about where projects should be built. And it would have that done through a democratic vote at a town meeting or through the city council. And once that vote is taken, the residents would be bound to that contract, and they would enable the financing of a new renewable energy project. So I wanted to thank you for your support of that bill. And it's kind of consistent with what I heard today. It's about making these decisions at a local level. They'll be the smartest decisions rather than at a state or a federal level. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much. Thank you very much for your leadership and also your willingness to come to the mainland.
I was getting a bit worried because the last ferry boat is at 8:30.
Because I understand you had a meeting scheduled in the Vineyard with your senator, and you were willing to change that so we could go ahead with this hearing tonight. And so I thank you very much for doing that.
I'm so proud to be able to be a lead sponsor on the Community Empowerment Bill. You folks have been pounding the shoe leather in the building on Beacon Hill like few others I've seen, and so very optimistic. Dylan Fernandez, who represents the islands and parts of Falmouth, has filed in the House as well. So we're really hopeful for this. It's a really good bill, really great kind of policy idea, and I'm hoping we can move forward on it this session.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, good evening, Senators. My name's Larry McGrath. I live in Plymouth. I'm in a butter as well to the 4 500-foot industrial turbines that have been put on the Cranberry Bog next to my neighborhood. I know familiar faces here, but Senator Pacheco, Senator Brady from my days in the State House and the legislature and the State Auditor's Office. I don't know you senators here, but I can honestly say the suggestion that local zoning is going to provide relief in this particular case, given what was thrust upon a lower middle class neighborhood in South Plymouth with no political power, was the most egregious layer upon layer of conflicts of interest. Now, I know it's a great thing. I love the fact that we're trying to get renewable energy in its many forms, but like Karen, my home vibrates and my wife had to catch a television monitor before it vibrated off the dresser upstairs. I have a 10-year-old son. When you go down my street, there's a 500-foot turbine that looms over my home, and I have yet to see a real estate listing that advertises turbine view property. So what I'm asking for is practical relief. We have a lot of people that are impacted in 21 communities across the Commonwealth. I know that Representative Vieira filed a bill 2919, which would be an act to help mitigate the adverse effects of turbines. We obviously need to have our energy coming in many forms, but we can't rely on local zoning. We need an overarching effort statewide because of the particulars of local politics.
Yeah, let me just intercede here for 1 second. I don't want anything I said earlier to be taken that I was implying that local zoning is the answer.
Right.
What I was actually trying to say was that the reason why we have some of the situations we have across the state right now is because proponents took advantage of
Yes, sir.
the local zoning laws that were put in, that are in place. And we don't have an overriding siting law in place. And those are really, you know, two of the problems. And so I don't disagree with what you're saying. I'm just saying that and I was referencing the fact that someone brought up the Global Warming Solutions Act, which has really nothing to do with the siting.
Right.
The siting is a very, very different issue, and I think it should be in a separate area of our state statute.
Sure.
That goes above the zoning, but that is something we have not been able to get done yet. And until something like that is done, it's very difficult to go back, as you know, from being in the state auditor's office, to go back and retroactively, you know, do something that was done under existing
Sure.
statute.
Well, what I would suggest practically, Karen and several of us met with the Department of Environmental Protection, for
Yes.
example. They consider noise to be air pollution. That's their own statement on the matter. We try to get them to get the Board of Health to enforce the nuisance factor.
Right.
You can't define nuisance. They have a model bylaw for turbine siting. The Plymouth bylaw is twice as loud as the model bylaw, but it's on the books. What can you do? But you can define a nuisance, and you can direct the Board of Health. We have a disconnect between the local and the state agencies. We've been in several meetings in Lakeville, and we've been to the Board of Health in Plymouth. There is just nobody that is coming to bridge that gap and help us out, because the DEP people were very genuine. They wanted to try to help, but this is a hard thing to fight against, because everybody, well, I ran for the legislature. How could you not be in favor of clean energy? But you really have to look hard at the financial and health impacts of those that live so close. And I appreciate your time. I really do appreciate the fact that you put this together and you came down. I know you come down from Brockton, and you're coming down from Taunton, and it's important that you're having this listening tour, but we need help.
Well, I have to be honest. I have a summer house in Hyannis, so I didn't have too far to go last night.
But you're still here. You're
But I'm
still here.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very
Good
much.
night.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Joel, and I live in Hyannis. And one thing that I wanted to bring up is there's one part of the federal budget that is in jeopardy that I think needs, I was wondering if we're doing anything on a state level, and that's ARPA-E, the Advanced Research Projects Agency, focused on energy projects. And it invests a lot into projects that are focused on next generation renewables, including offshore wind, advanced solar, and even next-generation nuclear, which may not be popular with some people here, but I think is an important part of a carbon-free future. There are a lot of high-tech companies in Massachusetts, and I'm wondering if we're doing anything on a state level to incentivize those to be investing in R&D and advanced renewables.
So glad to just answer this because it's a specific question. On the federal front, we actually had in the Senate a delegation of 6 senators, including myself, who went to DC, not only to meet with our congressional delegation, but a number of federal agencies. Actually, we're able to have some pretty substantive meetings with folks at HHS and education, transportation, Department of Interior. You know, I think there's a lot of uncertainty right now in DC. The takeaway that me and the group brought is sort of, you know, there's the rhetoric that you sort of are the rhetoric that you may be hearing may or may not be connected to what actually is happening among budget writers, which is in the Congress on Capitol Hill. I think you can look to the continuing resolution actually as an example of, you know, we've heard a lot of cuts for instance, the NIH. That funding was actually increased. I think another place to look at this, and a real leader actually in some of this research, has been the Department of Defense. And my sense is that's ongoing. To your question about Massachusetts, we have something called the Clean Energy Center, which, if you're not aware of it, does some pretty significant investment in these technologies. You know, Mass has
They have a representative here tonight.
They do.
Actually,
Awesome.
right over here, he's got his hand up.
Oh, right.
Yeah, representing the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center.
So it's
Okay,
called
awesome.
Amplify Massachusetts. So a lot, but I think we can do a lot more. I would add, you know, it's just a little after 7:45. So if you'd like to speak, I'd ask folks to get in line, and glad to take all the folks who are in line, and anyone else jump in line. We'd love to hear from you. So thank you.
One last thing I
Yeah,
wanted to second a few things that I heard. I think the energy storage investments are a great thing.
Yes.
Time of use rates should definitely be considered. And a carbon tax would probably be one of the best things to wean us off of fossil fuels. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sheila Place from Marston's Mills. I'll be quick because time is short. I'm very glad to hear that we have some carbon pricing bills. I would love to see those fast-tracked. I'm with Dr. Woodwell on the urgency of the problem, and he's much too modest. He's more than a scientist. He founded the Woods Hole Research Center something like 32 years ago, and it's the #1 climate think tank in the world for the 3rd year in a row. So he's a remarkable person. Solar incentives. I know that we had, there's a relatively new bill, 2016, that came out with great fanfare. So I wonder why the incentives are being decreased. We subsidized fossil fuels for, 40 years. So we're seeing solar incentives decrease. This is a hotbed of solar installation. There's 200 companies in this state doing solar. So somebody needs to explain to me why the incentives are going down. Eversource is getting in the mix. So I think that's a problem, and we need to fix that because we need solar. There is urgency. The last thing, and nobody's mentioned this, but what about gas leaks? We know that methane is a particularly virulent climate disruptor, and I haven't heard too much about that. I wonder why we would install new pipelines when we know that we have hundreds of gas leaks in Massachusetts. So it seems like let's plug the pipe before we add more infrastructure. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Is that good? Hi, I'm Martha Powers from West Yarmouth, and I have a couple of things I want to mention. First, I'm so excited that people brought up the #1 cause of greenhouse gases, which is the livestock industry. We've known it since 2006, and yet you rarely hear it mentioned at these gatherings I've been going to for many years. And I'm guessing the reason is because most people, like you guys, perhaps eat meat and you don't feel you can bring it up and recommend changes that you're not doing yourself. But what I really think you need to do is have it front and center in these conversations, and thank you for doing this. So everybody gets educated about this. Nobody has to give up meat. I know how hard it is to give up things you're attached to. But if everybody just gave it up one day a week, it would have a radical difference, and it would have a faster impact than almost any other solution. So I think it needs to be discussed. It needs to be, people need to be educated and let them make the choice. But right now, a lot of people don't even know that's the #1 cause. They think buying a Prius will help. When I've heard it said, if you're a vegan and drive a Hummer, you're doing much better for the environment than a meat eater who rides a bike. So,
on this, you know, because this has been brought up a few times, are there specific policy solutions given that Massachusetts contribution from like we are not a big agricultural state, at least when it comes to meat production. Cranberries is a little different. But if there's any sort of tangible policy solutions, I think that would be helpful.
I don't really know. I mean, it's really about educating people. I don't know if you could impact the schools and what they serve for lunches, things like that. Kids are learning about this, the issues all around, and they're very interested in making a difference. And again, they don't have to radically change. They just need to be educated on the issue. So it needs to come out of hiding. And so thank you for doing that. I also wanted to touch on the wildlife. I've long been a wildlife advocate. With the wind turbines, the birds are at great risk with the wind turbines, particularly offshore. We're in the middle of one of the biggest migratory pathways here on the East Coast. It's very important. There's endangered species going up and down. I feel it's our responsibility to keep it a safe passage for them. And anyone installing large installations has to do studies on the birds. They have to be required to do that. Same with bats. All species of bats in Massachusetts are at risk now, and because of the white nose syndrome and other things. All migrating species of bats fly across Nantucket Sound. Wind turbines are known killers of bats because their lungs implode before they even get hit by the turbines. And it's believed when they fly over open water, they turn their sonar way down so they're not detecting the turbines. They don't expect a giant building in the middle of the ocean. So any developer has to do the studies. They say it's too expensive to do night studies, but they have to be required to do them as part of that development. So I think that's important. And then I just wanted to add one thing. This year I've been much more aware of what young people are doing. There's some wonderful teachers. There's at least one here tonight, working with middle school, high schoolers. They're eager to learn, the ones I've worked with on projects. They're really wanting to get involved. They understand the issues. They know more than their parents. And they know they're inheriting this mess that we've all created for them. And if you could, as legislators, find money for the schools to do projects or conferences or get the kids together and get them involved so that they could really flourish and learn what it's like to pass a bill and to work on these issues, I think that would be fabulous, to funnel some money towards the schools. So, thank you.
Thank you. I want to be mindful of time, so the last five, you stuck in there. Last five folks, please join the microphone. I think we're going to end with a woman in the red sweater. You'll be our last word, which is you, right there. It was going to be the guy in the blue shirt, but you're the lucky winner. So, sir, please welcome your comments, and please keep it to 3 minutes.
Thank you for coming. My name is Tom Hoppenstead. I'm from Katuitt, Massachusetts, and I work here at Mashpee High School. My comments are largely along the same lines as the other speakers. I do have some specific kind of practical small things that I'd like you guys to keep in mind. I would echo what the past speaker said about the importance of educating the public, and in particular to educate the public about developing in coastal zones and in storm surge areas and areas that are likely to flood. We need to have a plan, and I think maybe the comprehensive plan might be able to get to that, where people have access to relocate away from flood zones and away from areas that are going to be prone to more flooding as the climate continues to warm. I'd also like you to think about supporting existing and develop and implement additional active integrated pest management systems. Because as the climate continues to warm, we're going to see more disease-carrying organisms, ticks, mosquitoes, and we need to be cognizant of those and work up some plans that don't apply lots of pesticides, but do help control those organisms. And we have some good systems in place throughout the country that we could bring to bear to Massachusetts. I guess in order to address the state's greenhouse gas footprint, I'd like you to consider creating an aggressive approach to reduce carbon emissions from automobiles, mass transit systems, and industries, particularly energy-producing sector. Explore cap and trade, which I'm sure you are. Options for energy-producing industries. Establish some more aggressive emissions control on automobiles and anything burning fossil fuels. And create some tax incentives, for landowners to retain and expand upon forested landscapes, to install their own solar photovoltaic cells and systems to kind of help with offsetting our overall carbon footprint. I did write these up. I've got some concerns here as well as some more recommendations. I'd like to just share this document with you. I also have another short note from one of my students who's also on the environmental club here at Mashpee High School, and I'd like to leave that with you too, if I could.
Absolutely. On
Great.
integrated pest management, the Department of Public Health is long overdue in updates to their housing code regulations. Integrated pest management is in there, but they need to release those draft regulations. So some pestering there on that front, especially if you care about integrated pest management. I know it's not the most sexy topic, but it's pretty critical as it relates to changing climate. That's where some pressure could go a long way.
Great, thank you. Can I turn?
Yes, please, right over here, staff will take anything in writing, by the way, that anyone has, or anyone that would like to submit something to the committee in writing, please do so. You can do it tonight. There are staff sitting in the front row here tonight, and also, again, to this site, malegislature.gov. /clean energy future. You can submit information to us. One of the other things I wanted to mention, I'm sorry to say this just because I'm going to forget it if I don't say it right now. There's been a lot of discussion about wind tonight, and there are differences between onshore wind and offshore wind, although some of the siting, even in offshore wind, needs to be looked at quite carefully. And that's why one of the strategies that we utilized in Massachusetts with our offshore wind siting, when we're going out for procurement of offshore wind right now, we use the federal designation, federal land, federal ocean land that has been set aside, and I've just been assured that we will be able to put that up on the website just so people will actually be able to see how far out these turbines will be. I mean, you're talking about 14, 15 or more miles.
30.
30? Okay. I know it was way more than
256 acres.
Yes, it's at least that. It's fairly big, and there's been a lot of work that has been done up front relative to environmentals, relative to a lot of work relative to the ocean floor. There's a lot of that upfront environmental work that has been done before this land was allowed to go out to be leased. And that's what we are doing in the state, is utilizing that particular section of ocean. So I want to make sure you know that, and you know it's not right off the coast of Falmouth somewhere here. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about these federal waters that are set aside for this purpose, and that's what we're moving forward with the procurement that's in the field right now, and we're waiting for those bids to come back from offshore wind companies, along with hydroelectric bids as well from bids that will come in to have a blended system of both offshore wind and hydroelectricity. So anyway, yes, ma'am, so, sorry. Go right
I
ahead.
may address that later. Hi, thank you so much for being here this evening. My name is Linda Davis, and I'm from Falmouth. And I presently serve as chairman of the Solid Waste Advisory Committee. There are 7 of us appointed by the selectmen to develop an integrated waste management policy and strategies to go with it in dealing with trash, waste, recycling, hazardous waste, and the like. And clearly, as we do our research on it and make recommendations, we see that trash is becoming a future problem, right up there with energy and water, among other things. And so I ask you that as you consider down the line policies in regard to some of the issues that have been brought forward, always keep in mind that trash is very much interrelated to these issues. And we're going to be seeing more and more of that as we produce more trash and find few areas to deal with it. But the second reason I'm here is about what's happened in Falmouth with the wind turbines. I was part of a group seeking a balanced solution to the wind turbine issue. I was part of a group called the Wind Turbine Option Process. It was a group supported by the selectmen that met to discuss possible options and resolutions. That committee, that group, I should say, met for over a year and a half, did extensive research, and unfortunately went nowhere. As you know now, there are at least 9 pending cases dealing with Falmouth's issue. Before I ask you what I'm going to ask you, I'll just give you a little background to me. Right now, actually, I have 2 relatives from Sweden for the weekend, a long weekend. They are both engineers. They happen to live in the greenest city in Europe, and both went to school at the University of Vecqua, which is considered the greenest city in Europe. I could write books based on the information that they have shared, how they got to be the greenest city in Europe, how they do their trash, how they do energy, how they protect their water, how they protect citizens' rights, and so forth. On the other hand, my other side of my family happens to be involved in producing offshore wind. So I know about the 2013 negotiations with the Department of Interior for 256 acres, 30 miles out. It's a 30-year lease that you're dealing with, that you're talking about. I understand that. And they have successfully installed, they're now operating the 5 turbines off the coast of Block Island. With all of that, this is what I want to ask you. Right now, Falmouth is in limbo. This wind turbine issue has been going on for years. It is now in the courts. I understand to a certain degree that no one wants to talk about it because it has become a legal issue. There are several of us, myself and others, who are part of this wind turbine option process, who have been vigilant in watching this unfold here in Falmouth. We've gathered more data, and we are ready to move on this. We would like to meet with you. This is not a request. This is a challenge, because we know that down the line, there are options for resolving this problem, not only in Falmouth, but in some of the other communities that were present here. We can do this. I am very optimistic. I think we can brainstorm. I think we can think out of the box. I think we can take the information that we have, and I think that we can come up with some viable alternatives that have not been discussed at all. And I put it to you, myself and others, we will come to Boston. If you need us at a public hearing, we will come. We will provide you with information. We'll meet with you anywhere. But there's a need to do this because Massachusetts cannot move on in looking at renewable energy until it can face the problems that are present and the people who are suffering and the towns that are bleeding money, among other things. There's got to be a way. And I am willing, along with some others, I'm not a neighbor. I have nothing personally to gain, but I have a lot of information to contribute and to be with others who will sit down and try to work out some viable solutions for Falmouth and for others. Want to take up that challenge?
I would ask, with Representative Vieira and Senator DiMacedo, have you connected with their offices, and are you meeting with them? Because that's really the place, I think, to start. I worked at the Department of Public Health before this position. I understand how sort of fraught and challenging an issue this has been.
We will reach out to anyone who wants to make these communities now better places for everyone.
So, I would definitely suggest starting there.
And what about your?
Yep.
So let me just say that I'm pleased to meet with anyone that is here about any of the issues that you're talking about tonight. I do have statewide responsibilities, and so that's one of the responsibilities I have, is to try to reach out. But I would encourage first that you talk to the senator that represents you. The senator that represents you is very well thought of on Beacon Hill and knows these issues inside and out from actually serving within the Department of Public Health and looking at these issues in great detail, and the delegation here for this area of the state. Having said that, I certainly would meet with anyone with the delegation to see if there are you're very convincing to me that we can come up with some kind of a solution here. So I would like to hear what those possible solutions are. But just for the public record too, my staff has just confirmed the parcels that we're talking about in terms of offshore wind, which is totally different than what we're talking about here now in terms of land-based wind, is really more in the line of 742,000 acres of land. There's land eventually underneath there, so in the ocean floor, but of ocean. That's in the federal jurisdiction of the 4 sites that are set aside. And so you're really talking about the Saudi Arabia of wind, offshore wind, out there that is a potential, for future generation. So let's follow this up, at another time when we have more time. But I would be pleased to sit down with Senator Sear and others in the delegation to talk to you about this or any other issue that you'd like to talk about.
So this is a yes, is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, that's what I said.
That's what we start. We start there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sir.
Hi, I'm Dave Bloomfield from Mashpee, and all the things you want to do in energy are going to be capital intensive. Massachusetts right now has a $500 million shortfall At the same time, we have almost zero unemployment, and the revenue stream continues to decline. The solution is in your court, and that's a re-examination of the tax structure. If you want to do anything, we're going to have to do something about income inequality. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
All right, gentlemen, my name is Chris Thompson. I'm from Mashpee. Gentleman just actually hit on what I was hoping to hit was taxes. He was right. We have a $500 million shortfall right now, and we do have a lot of people paying taxes. So how are we paying for, and how are we going to be actually affected by these wind farms that are going to be put up? How much of our tax dollars is going to be going into that, along with the solar plants? Now, based on what a lot of people have been saying, we need a solution, but not next to me. And I'm not doing that to slight anyone that's having problems, because everyone's having problems. We have problems with birds. We have problems with everything. I mean, we need a solution, not, oh, we need to do this, but we can't because. Now, the young woman that was up, 2 people before me, mentioned Sweden, and that's a very good place to look at, because they have 3 million more people than we do as a state. And they are 99% of their household goods are recyclable, and the 1% that isn't gets burned for energy. They've seen a mass reduction in heavy metals and everything, and that having our own aquifer is kind of important to reduce the heavy metals. But I mean, they've gotten to the point where they are actually importing trash because they're so efficient in how they recycle. Something that is so close, being only a few million people in size, isn't that an infrastructure and at least a system that we can look at to try and replicate, considering they've already got it done? I mean, that's really it, and I like bacon.
All right, let me just let me just say this, because I think it's timely, some of the concern about trash. Tomorrow afternoon at the State House at 1 p.m., the Committee on Environment, Natural Resources, and Agriculture is having an oversight hearing on landfills in the Commonwealth. I received a call from one of the chairs, the Senate chair, asking me to be at the hearing if I could join them, because I was the former chair of that committee, and under this committee's jurisdiction, we also look at the landfills, because as many of you may know, landfills are a significant source of greenhouse gas emissions. And they are because of the terrible job we do relative to recycling vis-a-vis any of our European partners that are out there. They have a very, very high recycling rate, and then they, gasify the remaining product in very high efficiency, burners, which is not what was seen in the old days as incinerators. But these are very, very different type of technology, which we should be starting to take a look at. So this is something that is being put on the front burner, so to speak, by the Joint Committee on Environment, Natural Resources, and Agriculture, and there is a public hearing on this issue. And why is that important to everybody that cares about landfills and carbon emissions? The Joint Committee process, usually you don't have an oversight hearing this early in a session. We usually have the hearings on all the bills that are before the various committees. So that's how important the committee chairs feel this issue is. And one of the reasons why I feel it's very important is because of the carbon emissions that are being emitted by landfills, and also because of the crisis that is out there now from a financial perspective with cities and towns all across the Commonwealth as to what is happening with landfilling, because it's a tremendous cost to ship waste across the border to another state, and that doesn't help us with a greenhouse gas emission issue. We ship it across the border to another state, and then they burn it. And we have the same problem, right? So we're trying to get to that issue as well, but I wanted to make sure I mentioned that before we left tonight, that tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock, anybody that is interested, it's a public hearing. I'm not sure which room it's going to be in, but it's at the State House at 1 o'clock tomorrow, the Joint Committee on Energy, Environment, Joint Committee on Environment, Natural Resources, and Agriculture. And one other thing was about the tax issue. We're not really here talking about taxes. I can tell you that the offshore wind development, solar development, all of these things, we did have incentives for them. But what they've produced is $11.8 billion of our existing economy is in the new clean energy sector. So we've had a cost benefit that has accrued to the state as a result of our investments in incentives that went into our clean energy strategy. Over 100,000 private sector jobs that have been created, over 6,700 small businesses that have been created. It has been a success story. Now, we've got to do a lot more in this regard if we're going to get down to the required numbers that we got to get down to, and that's part of what tonight is about. This is the first hearing, and you are the last speaker.
Okay,
so I want to have you introduce yourself and let us conclude with your thoughts.
Thank you. My name is Joyce Flynn. I'm from South Yarmouth. Thank you for having this. It's a really urgent matter. I think democracies will be under most pressure when global warming really kicks in. I tried to think of things that would be statewide initiatives that I could suggest, and I came up with these. They are either no or little cost. You'll be glad to know in a tight year. The first is electronic. As things strangely vanish from the Environmental Protection Agency website, one thing that the state of California has done is to make usable by everyone its California Cools calculator. This is a calculator that can also be used as a phone app in which you put in information on your lifestyle, you know, how many people in your household, what kind of heat you use, you know, just general information, including ages of children, whether the children shower as often as they should, what kind of food do you eat, and you can plot your own probable carbon footprint in terms of tons every year. I was appalled to discover that I was apparently using, well, with one person in my household, in addition to myself, 33 tons of carbon annually. But if Massachusetts had something like this, it would be cool, it would be a game. I don't know if we'll ever have anything so wonderful as the name California Cools, but Mass something, there must be some catchy title. That would enable people to plug in and just step by step start to get an idea of where they were going. I think you could probably get some college interns and high school students who are really good to put that together. My second thought, using existing local institutions, is that perhaps if the state put together a 6-week adult ed curriculum on energy use, energy consumption, and carbon, that could be offered in the evening adult ed sessions of schools across the Commonwealth who wouldn't have time or resources, they're so stretched, to put together their own curriculum, but that would make it very easy. The third thing would cost a little money. I would love to see if people took those 6-week courses, that they had a carrot at the end of that, that they would get a tree appropriate, I mean, very tiny to grow, appropriate to wherever they were in the state for the maximum sustainability, but a really good match for their local environment. So that's what I propose for state policy, and I'd also like to ask your help in pushing back where utilities are going the opposite way of conservation and energy efficiency. With our 3 electric utilities in Massachusetts, Unitil is enlightened. It's tiny, but it's doing amazing things. National Grid has a great plan for grid modernization for the regions, none of them here on Cape or on the Vineyard, which are under its jurisdiction. And Eversource, in its proposal for grid modernization, and it's taking some of that and putting it into the rate plan, is going the opposite way so that one wouldn't be able to sign up for competitive power supply and have time of use metering. One wouldn't be able to take advantage of the technology without a significant personal financial investment, and one would have to be an Eversource basic service customer. So in that, I ask your direct help, but that's like a sort of lobbying political persuasion help. And I hope that doesn't cost more than the salaries of the state senators who were kind enough to come today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
On the
By the way,
yeah.
ma'am, he's got an app already. He's
So,
got it going.
It's actually not mine. It's set up by ISO New England, which runs the grid here for not only Massachusetts, but all 6 New England states. And so the app is called ISO to go.
That's only for electricity, though, right?
That's only electricity, but I think it's a start and a place that I'd really encourage folks to download it on your phone. Actually, Representative Sarah Peak, who represents the Lower and Outer Cape, and I were in a meeting with ISO New England. Actually, we were trying to get ISO to forgive. It was a Pilgrim nuclear power plant issue. And anyway, the app is fascinating. You can see right now what sort of our current energy mix is, how much we're consuming. The ISO New England folks are quite eager to share what they have. So I'd take a look at this, and if you'd like to reach out to them or have my office reach out to them and see how you can improve on that. California Cool sounds pretty cool, but
it includes everything, including the amount used for transporting the underwear that you buy.
But take a look at this, because I think it's really an interesting piece, and I encourage all folks. It's ISO to go, and it's quite fun. Yeah.
Great. See, if you get a really good title, that's half of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Listen, just before we end tonight's forum, let me hand it over to Senator Brady to say a few words.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman Pacheco. I want to thank Senator Pacheco and your Senator Julian here for inviting me today. You have some great representation from the area down in the Cape here. I sit on the Telecommunications and Energy Committee as a vice chairman, and we're taking all this information that you have given us tonight to utilize that. And there was a lot of issues that got brought up today. Another thing we're looking at is organic waste. Because of what was mentioned with the landfills, we have to push for the reduction of organic waste and better utilize recycling. So we're looking at those ideas. Solar net metering is another idea. We're looking at carbon pricing and many, many things across the board. So I appreciate everyone's input. I also serve as chairman of the Revenue Committee, and this is an important issue that we have to find ways to keep costs down to fund some of these programs. We're competing with other states, and it was great that we were able to get a company to come to Massachusetts that's paying taxes like every other business, but there's some companies that do business in other states, but they're located in other states, but they're doing business with Massachusetts, and they're not paying their fair share. So we're trying to do everything we can to get more revenue into the Commonwealth. The private sector is doing unbelievable moving forward, but we need more revenue to cover the cost of all these things and to keep the cost down best as we can for the consumer and the constituents. So we're looking at a wide range of issues out there, and I appreciate everyone's input. And I'm going to pass it back to our chairman, Senator Pacheco. Thank you, everyone who came out tonight. And one last thing, if you didn't have time to come to tonight's meeting, I know our colleagues are going to mention that, you can respond via the internet or even by getting a petition signed, because if there's an important issue, you can always get it to one of our committees, and the more the merrier. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Brady. And let me just, first of all, in my closing, congratulate all of you. This is what democracy is all about. Citizen participation is what we need to have more of in this country and in our state. And so I want to thank each and every one of you for coming out tonight and giving us your viewpoint on what is taking place in the Commonwealth and what you would like to see the energy future be like here in Massachusetts. Again, I mentioned it earlier, but malegislature.gov/clean energy future. Please continue to stay in touch with us. Also, #clean future. If you want to tweet out anything, I know that we've had a few people tonight tweeting, and we thank you for doing that and letting people know what we're doing here and where we're going to be. We're going to Sudbury next, tomorrow night, and then the following week we have a couple of more forums. We'll be in my home, the city of Taunton, on the 16th, I believe. All these forums are on our website. They're from 6 to 8 in each of the evenings. And we're also going to be going out and looking at some energy projects that have taken place, some of the solar fields that have taken place, some of the anaerobic digestion facilities that have been put in place in some of the farm communities across the state. We're going to be doing a lot of that and trying to keep a clean energy future on the front burner so that we can have more of a dialogue. Let me just say at the end here, the least expensive kilowatt hour we can use is the one we don't use at all. Energy efficiency. And as good as we are in Massachusetts, we're actually #1 in the United States in energy efficiency. But that's not good enough, because as my former chair of the Committee on Energy used to say, when you're #1, that's okay, but when you're #1 and everybody else is so bad, it's not that great, you know? So we've got a lot more we can do in the energy efficiency side. It's amazing what's happening in the built environment, and it's amazing what is starting to take place in the transportation sector. We're seeing a lot happening with electric vehicles that are coming on to the market. You're going to see a lot of new models that will be out there this year. We have a goal. What is it, Clean Energy Center? We've 300,000 EV vehicles is our new goal for the New England region, and we're working with our other states in New England to do that. So we're looking at every sector of the clean energy economy. We want you to be part of that. Please let us know what you think we should be doing. And my final word is to congratulate Senator Sear in putting together tonight's forum, for hosting us, for him and his staff, for the great work that they have done. I want to thank Senator DiMacedo, a neighboring district, for hosting us at the U.S. Geological Survey Center earlier today. And I want to thank the vice chair of this committee, Senator Eldridge, for being with us most of the day as well. So you have a lot of legislative leaders that care about this issue. They care about what you have to say to us, and you'll just have to keep your eye on us to see if we follow up and follow through. I think you'll be pleased with us in that regard. Senator Sear, for closing remarks.
Thank you, Senator Pacheco, for putting Cape Cod and the islands first. That often doesn't happen when we're talking about statewide initiatives. So thank you so much on behalf of the folks who live down here. And thank you, Senator Brady, for joining us as well. You know, I really want to thank the Mashpee Schools again for hosting us. Tom O'Hara, who snuck in later, he's a selectman here in Mashpee and member of the Assembly of Delegates. Really want to thank members of my team who put this together, Pat Johnson, my chief of staff, and Leslie Sandberg, my district director, also Kyle and Serena in Senator Pacheco's office. And we really, you know, the one thing I've found pretty remarkable in my relatively short tenure, this is month 5 for me as your state senator, is how much effort members of the Senate take in making sure that we're getting out, listening, hearing, getting feedback. Earlier this year, the Senate held a Commonwealth Conversations tour. We literally visited every corner of the state and had public hearings. You'd have 10, 15, almost 20 senators on the stage listening. That then is going into a report that's going to be coming out, I think, slightly after we do our budget in June, really around having an agenda that's reflective of the people and the residents of the Commonwealth. And that's something that I've been pleasantly surprised about, and I think I'm really grateful for just the tremendously collaborative, supportive environment and bipartisan environment we have in our Senate. I'm just honored to serve with you folks and to represent the good people of Mashpee and the Greater Cape and Islands.
Well, let me just thank you again. I'm going to close it off by, again, thanking all of you for being here. And I'm going to thank Serena and Kyle, because I'm in trouble that I didn't say it first. But Serena and Kyle from my office staff, they've done an outstanding job in trying to put all of these sessions together, working with senators that are hosting it in their respective district. Final point I want to make, raise your hands if you really want a clean energy future for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Do you really? Okay, if you really want that future, then it's not only up to us up here. The way our democracy works is citizen participation, right? So I'm charging everyone here tonight. You'll see the information on our website. You will be able to get the information that you'll be able to see some of the comments that are coming back and forth. We will have the information up on our site in terms of a lot of the pieces, you know, the major pieces of legislation that are out there. If you really want these pieces of legislation passed, we're going to do everything we can to get it done in the Senate. But we're going to need a lot more support to get it passed, not only in the Senate and the House, but also to have the executive branch sign it. And I'll give you one example as we close. Carbon pricing was talked about. And let's not pick a bill right now. Let's just say we want to do carbon pricing. We've already had a press statement out from the executive branch saying no. So based upon that, that means if we want to go forward, that means we need 2/3 of support in the House and Senate. Where does that level of support come from? The people. It comes from the people through their representatives to support a significant movement in all of these issues. So we will work with you. We want to listen to you. We want to move forward. But we're also going to need that citizen support as we go forward to really see increase in renewable portfolio standards, look at new ways in which we can incent solar, do some of the cutting-edge work that's going on with storage. All of these types of things that we're interested in doing, community empowerment at the local level so we can have more of a decentralized grid. All of those things are possible. We can do them. It's not impossible. Examples are countless in Europe. We heard some examples earlier tonight about what's happening in Sweden or Denmark or Portugal. I just got back from Portugal. Believe it or not.